Drew Lock looks like he may be a permanent answer for the Denver Broncos at quarterback. How long this will last, nobody knows. The Saints and the 49ers put on a classic. If you put those two teams together, it's hard to expect anything less. The Titans keep on rolling, and the Houston Texans are falling at the worst possible time, and there's a very good chance that with the Titans having to play the Texans two more times, they could clinch the AFC South. The Ravens keep on rolling, and the Kansas City Chiefs, yes, I will say this, robbed the New England Patriots of a win Sunday. The Jacksonville Jaguars got dominated because no matter how many times they switch their quarterback, the team still sucks. And if you look at it, hey, look, everybody, Eli's back. Eli Manning will start today against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I hope he has the game of his life. Ladies and gentlemen, let's roll. It is time to talk about all the games like we do each and every week here. Yesterday was a rather crazy day in the NFL. We saw pretty much a little bit of everything in these games. Me going over each and every game like I always do, and going to ensure the people that I provide the right information about all these games, as well as the usual previews and semi-predictions going forward in these games. We're basically going to start it here with the Colts and the Buccaneers. Obviously, the Buccaneers have no chance of making any type of playoffs, but the Colts were still sliding after losing to the Tennessee Titans last week. The Colts had a very minimal chance of making the playoffs, and they pretty much cemented their chances into the grave with this loss. This week, they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they practically were eliminated by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from the playoffs. The Colts had control a decent while in this game, but the Bucs rallied late to beat the Colts. Now, I want to talk about Jameis Winston for a second. He had 456 yards and 4 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions. Now, Jameis Winston is one of those quarterbacks that can throw you for a lot of yards and even touchdowns, but I don't know why he always throws so many picks. So to me, that the stat is not as impressive. I would take somebody that threw for 250 yards and made almost every single one of their passes and didn't throw a pick, but he threw all those interceptions. Chris Godwin was a top receiver, 7 receptions, 91 yards for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you also saw that Johnson also had 3 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown. The Colts lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 38-35, and they are now 6-7 on the season. They will certainly not be fighting for a AFC South division title because that is practically out of the question. They have a sliver of a chance at a wild card, but I do not see that happening now just because the Titans, Steelers, Bills, everybody in there is so close. I'm definitely banking on Buffalo getting one of the 2 wild cards in the AFC. The other one will probably be the Steelers. If we assume that the Titans beat the Texans coming up, there's a lot of different possibilities that could happen here. I may have to make a separate video to break down what team and so-and-so could still make the playoffs. But if the Titans were to win and beat the Houston Texans, they have to play them twice still. They could still realistically win the AFC South, and if not, still get a wild card spot. The next game was the New York Jets winning on a Sunday. Yes, that is a different change of scenery. Robbie Anderson had 7 receptions for 116 yards and a touchdown. Sam Darnold did all right. He had 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Jets kicked a field goal as time expires to win against the Dolphins in one of the most meaningless games of the year. Good win for the Jets, 22-21. The New York Jets beat the Miami Dolphins, who now get their double-digit loss on the season, if I am correct. We've seen Robbie Anderson start to play a little bit better towards the end of the season, being a wide receiver for the Jets. And we've also seen Darnold, I don't want to say find his groove, but start to improve his level of play a little bit. Again, when he first came back, they had that really rough schedule. And it's by no means me justifying it, but it's just me kind of just breaking it down to you guys in the scheme of things. The best game of the day, depending on who you talk to, but probably pretty much everybody, was the Saints hosting the 49ers. Saints were 10-2 prior going to this game. 49ers the same, both respectable leaders of their division. And this was an absolute classic. Jimmy Garoppolo went off. He had 349 yards, 4 touchdowns. Sanders caught well. He had 7 receptions, 157 yards, and a touchdown for the 49ers. And on the other side, Breeze did the same thing, just a little bit better. 349 yards and 5 touchdowns. Michael Thomas continues his brilliant season with 11 receptions, 134 yards, and a touchdown. This game was absolutely fantastic. It went back and forth, and it came down to the very end. And at the very end of things, it saw the San Francisco 49ers getting the win over the New Orleans Saints, 48-46. Lots of offense, lots of fireworks. So chances are, if you attended this fantastic game and you were not in your seat for a good vast portion of it, you missed a lot. And if you chose to go to the bathroom any other time besides halftime, then you probably missed about 4 touchdowns. This game was great. The Saints get their third loss of the season, but obviously the NFC South is a garbage can, so it affects them in no way whatsoever. The Panthers, Buccaneers, and Falcons are all in that division, and neither one of them are doing anything of importance. And the 49ers get a win, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit about the Seahawks losing, how that's big for the 49ers, because now they will put them in the driver's seat of their division in the NFC West. Division matchup in the NFC North, the Lions and the Vikings in Minnesota. There really wasn't too much to talk about in this game, but there was some stats. Kirk Cousins had 242 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs caught well for the Minnesota Vikings, 6 receptions for 92 yards. And it was a great defensive day for the Vikings because the Lions, who have not had Matthew Stafford, haven't been able to do really anything. 20-7 Vikings final. The Vikings stay well alive and hold on to the NFC wild card spot with a 9-4 record. There's another team, though, that could definitely be coming for them, and we're going to talk about that later as well. 20-7 Vikings beat the Lions. The Lions look lifeless, and the Vikings continue to play well. Broncos, Texans. This may be the surprise of the week, depending on who you talk to again. The luck of Lock. Yes, those were 2 different words. 3 touchdowns in the first half by Drew Lock for the Denver Broncos. He finished with 309 yards and 3 touchdowns. Noah Fant had 4 receptions for 113 yards for the Denver Broncos as a touchdown as well. This was a great day for DeAndre Hopkins on the losing side of things, though. He did have 7 receptions, 120 yards, and a touchdown. The final score was 38-20, and the Denver Broncos dominate the Houston Texans. And this is nothing but good news for me and my Titans fans. This is showing that in the recent weeks, the Houston Texans are falling off at the worst possible time, or they are playing games that are closer, and they're not looking maybe as so much as dominant as they were. I wouldn't say they're falling off, but they did lose, and they got blown out by the Denver Broncos. Now, I'm not taking any credit away from Drew Lock, but you have to look at it at this standpoint. At this point in the season, if you're getting blown out by the Broncos, that's really just not a good look in general. So now they fall a slot after losing that game, and now the Texans are 1 game ahead of the Titans, and they have to play them 2 more times this year. So next week, the Titans host the Texans. Then they each have a game in between. And then the final week of the season, which could be the division decider or division clincher, is the Titans going to Houston to take on the Texans. So I'm really looking forward to those games. Titans have kept winning, and it's just going to keep getting harder, and we're going to really have to keep going here. Redskins and Packers in Green Bay. This was an average day for Aaron Rodgers. He had 195 yards and a touchdown, but it was a great day on the run for Aaron Jones, who had 134 yards and a touchdown. Haskins didn't look, I wouldn't say Dwayne Haskins looked absolutely awful, but he was getting sacked quite a bit in this game. Final score was 20-15 Green Bay Packers, and they continue to hold on to that NFC North, which they will most certainly probably win. Now, there's one thing I want to make mention of. It is not that the Packers are not good. They are a good team. We know this. They will be making the playoffs, and they will make the playoffs rather interesting. But we have seen in a game like this late in the season against the Redskins, when the Packers realistically, maybe I'm not correct, they haven't clinched the division yet. They need to come out a lot stronger than this. Yes, Aaron Jones played great, but Aaron Rodgers really wasn't. You can't throw for 400 yards every game, but 100. You couldn't even hit the 200-yard mark against the Redskins. It's just certain things like that I want to bring into perspective, just on my end of things, because I do like Aaron Rodgers, and I know that he's going to play in the playoffs. But I mentioned this in my NFC playoff preview and predictions. I'm a bit worried about what we're going to get from the Green Bay Packers. Not Aaron Rodgers, but the Green Bay Packers. We've seen games where Aaron Jones gets shut down. We've seen games where the receivers don't do much. And the Packers defense, is still playing decent, but they've slipped up in certain games. So, I don't know. I'm really nervous about where we're going to see from the Green Bay Packers. And I think if you're a fan, you have to be excited, but you also have to watch with 2 eyes instead of just one. It is just going to be an interesting thing to see what we get from the Packers, especially because that's a team that I think is really hit or miss, and I'm not quite sure what we'll get from them in the playoffs as well. Bengals-Browns, a battle between a team that is somehow, some way still alive in the AFC. Here's the thing. Right now, the Bills and Steelers have the wild card, and anybody with a brain will tell you that if there's anybody else sliding into that wild card position, it's the Titans and nobody else. The Browns are not going to make the playoffs. The Colts are not going to make the playoffs. But realistically, they are still in the game. This was not the best day for Baker Mayfield, and we've seen underwhelming signs of him all season. The run game was great, and to be honest with you, for the first half of the season, the run game for the Cleveland Browns is what kept them in games. Chubb had 106 yards. It was a great rushing day for Joe Mixon, though, on the losing side of things. 146 yards and a touchdown. The Browns beat the Bengals 27-19, and they stay alive somehow, someway in the AFC wildcard race. If the Browns would have played at the level of play they played the last couple of weeks, just a little bit earlier in the season, I think that it would be a much different situation right now. At least the Browns are somewhat headed in the right direction. Again, I always thought they were overrated from the start. There were some people, I'll never forget the guy in the barbershop that was giving the Browns 11 wins before the season ever started, and that is the funniest guy I've ever met. Browns keep going. Bengals lost back right in the losing column after beating the Jets. They are now 1-12 on the year. The misery will continue for at least a few more weeks for the Cincinnati Bengals and their fans. And that is that. The Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. Another mix and match game against a team we haven't seen play yet. The Ravens and the Bills thought it could have been a little bit interesting, and it was a little bit interesting. Lamar Jackson had 145 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he also rushed for 40 yards on the side. Josh Allen did not look so great in this game. He was all over the place. And the Ravens clinched the playoffs after this win. 24-17, Ravens win this game. Lamar Jackson continues to show you why he's the real deal, and the Ravens keep rolling over everybody. They are 11-2 on the year. They clinched the playoff yesterday. And despite Josh Allen not having the greatest day for the Buffalo Bills at the end of it, the Bills still made this a somewhat interesting game. And like I said, in the AFC side of things, the Buffalo Bills could be a team that is very hard to beat for some teams, and they could be very interesting to watch as well. NFC South matchup, couldn't care any less. The Panthers and Falcons. Matt Ryan had himself a game. He had 313 yards and 2 touchdowns. Devontae Freeman rushed for 84 yards and a touchdown. I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but Zacchaeus had 93 yards and a touchdown for Atlanta. However, McCaffrey only rushed for 53 yards for Carolina, but he also had 11 receptions on 82 yards. So he had over 130 yards in total. The Falcons beat the brakes off of the Panthers when it was all said and done, 40-20. The Falcons are starting to show signs of life late in the season, but it is too little too late. They are winning some games, though, and they played much better in the second half of the season than they ever did in the first. Chargers, Jaguars. This was a hidden gem for the LA Chargers. Phillip Rivers had 314 yards and 3 touchdowns. Austin Eckler was a little bit of everywhere for the Chargers. He had 101 yards rushing, and he also had 4 receptions and 112 yards receiving as a touchdown. That is a very impressive stat. He should be one of your players of the week. The Chargers can beat the brakes off of the Jacksonville Jaguars 45-10. Again, means nothing for either team. The Jaguars can switch quarterbacks all they like, but the team is just terrible, and it continues to show. I think Minshew is massively overrated. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but that is just what I think. I think, people say Mayfield's overrated. I think he is a little bit overrated because we held Baker Mayfield to such a high ceiling, being the first pick in the draft. But I think Minshew is more overrated because Mayfield has at least shown you what he's capable of. Minshew has, he rallied the team a little bit, but I don't think he's that great, honestly. That's just my opinion. But let's talk about something that is great, and that's the Tennessee Titans. Going to Oakland to take on the Raiders, the Titans looking to keep dominating, and this may have been the best game of the Titans all year long. Ryan Tannehill is a gem for the Tennessee Titans. And someone made mention of something to me, and it makes me nervous because he's absolutely right. He said how Jimmy Garoppolo and I forgot the other person he said were playing great before they got monstrous contracts, and they got them, and then their level of play went down. Ryan Tannehill continues to set himself up for a massive contract with the Tennessee Titans. He had a great performance yesterday, 391 yards and 3 touchdowns. Henry had a little bit of a hamstring issue, but despite that, he still made his noise and presence felt. 103 yards and 2 touchdowns, and A.J. Brown, who was a receiver for the Titans that is really starting to come up. I like him a lot. He's got 5 receptions for 153 yards. and 2 touchdowns. This was a good game, however, on the losing side of things for Derek Carr. He had 263 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. Titans beat the brakes off the Raiders 42-21. And now is where it is going. We're going to go from a 8 to a 10 on the scale of importance for the Tennessee Titans. We've got Houston Texans next week at home. And it is a game that we really need to win. Again, the wild card is still in the fighting, but realistically, with how great we've played and being one of the better teams in the NFL, at least in terms of the last 5 weeks, the importance of the Titans winning this game is just absolutely extraordinary. I mean, we have to... If we win the AFC South, we're in good shape. And if you want me to be honest with you, I'm not getting arrogant by any means. And it depends who we play, but I think we can make the playoffs really interesting in the AFC. You know, Buffalo would be a team that I think would be interesting to play. New England is really the question mark. I don't know who's going to play them first. And then, of course, the Baltimore is the team that everybody wants to stay away from. And I think they beat the brakes off of us, too. But it's a great game for the Titans, and we've got an even more important one next week against Houston. Chiefs and Patriots. This was your 4:25 game that was aired. Again, I watched my Titans game separately, but this was aired. And believe it or not, I didn't care for this game. I don't know what it is about when Kansas City plays New England. I just do not care. Both teams are, honestly, I think, I don't even know how to describe it. I feel like throughout the year they lost what made them special. Mahomes had 283 yards and a touchdown in this game. Edelman was a top performer for New England. He had 8 receptions, 95 yards, and a touchdown. And Kansas City would hold off the Patriots, who looked like they couldn't do anything. 23-16, Kansas City wins the game. The Patriots cannot score. They have very little weapons to throw to. They can't get their run game going. And you're really starting to see the Patriots struggle. And if the Patriots didn't have the defense that they did, they'd be in a really, really deep hole right now, if you want me to be honest with you. So, again, you're seeing the Patriots continue to struggle. And if you want me to be honest with you guys, let me break some knowledge to you. The Buffalo Bills are 1 game out of the AFC East. So if the Patriots drop, which I don't think they will, but if they drop their next upcoming games, the Bills could still win the division. So there are so many possibilities, particularly on the AFC side of things, that could really happen. But I don't see that happening. I still see the Patriots winning the division. And I still see them being in the play. Obviously, they're going to be in the playoffs, but they don't look good. They do not look good in any of their games. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Arizona Cardinals. The Steelers continue to hold on and dominate in their game. Not dominate, but continue to look good with less than they have. Hodges had 152 yards and a touchdown. Christian Kirk was a top receiver for the Arizona Cardinals, 8 receptions and 85 yards. This was a very rough day for Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. The Steelers capitalized on mistakes, and Murray threw 3 interceptions in this game. Steelers were able to win this game against the Cardinals 23-17. They currently hold the second spot of 2 on the AFC wildcard side of things. Final game of the week was, final game of Sunday was the Seattle Seahawks going to LA to take on the Rams, who've played a little bit better over the last weeks. And they came out fast and they came out hard in this game. The LA Rams actually dominated the Seahawks for most of this game, and they were in big control. Jared Goff had 293 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyler Higbee, top receiver, tight end for the LA Rams, 7 receptions on 116 yards. We've seen, the Seahawks, this is maybe their one slip up. The LA Rams are playing hard, and they're playing hard fast. Now, that is another person that could impact the NFC wildcard spot. The Rams are right on the Vikings' tail, so if the Vikings do not win 2 of their last 3 at least, the LA Rams are right there beside them. We're going to see what we get. We're going to see what happens. But right now, I still think the Vikings are going to hold that, and the Rams are just going to be a little bit too short. Again, the Rams are starting to play better, but I'm worried that it's too little too late, and I'm not sure what we can get from Todd Gurley and the run game. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. As always, this was an interesting week to talk about for football. We're going to continue trying to do some different things throughout the week to keep the channel going.